Okay, good, good. So,
Actually, didn't have it done at all.
all right, Jessica, please.
Okay, I'm Jessica, and my topic is democracy in the former Yugoslavia. And I basically tried to figure out, in the region of the former Yugoslavia, which includes Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Macedonia, there's a really big disparity between how the countries have come to modernization and democracy since the time of independence in the early 90s. And I guess you all know that the Balkan region, Yugoslavia, was one federation, largely under Tito, but one federation for about 60 years under a different kind of communism, so to say. And since that broke up in the early 90s and the individual states declared independence, there's a big difference between, I'm going to do the most comparison between, I think I just said Slovakia, I don't mean Slovenia, I'm sorry, Slovenia. I'm going to do the biggest comparison between Slovenia and Bosnia because they have some of the biggest differences to show. And also how the EU has influenced this process, or if they have at all. So basically, when it comes to the differences, the Slovenia had joined the EU in 2004, and all the way down to Croatia has not joined the EU, but they're a candidate country. They're expected to join in 2012. Serbia has also applied. They're expected to join hopefully a few years later. But unfortunately, Bosnia hasn't even, as far as I know, at this moment applied for membership in the EU. So obviously there's a really big difference between Slovenia, who's been in the EU now for 6 years, and Bosnia, who hasn't even applied. So what could cause this difference is what can we look at to see the disparity when this used to be one region, one federation, and the region used to be acting together. So to look at the differences, I'm considering the historical background of before they were all in Yugoslavia, the cultural differences, the geography, north versus south, and then the politics and economics in the different states and how they've evolved. So historically, if you look at sort of a map and you've got the north and the south, you've got a lot of the old countries were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then towards the south they were part of the Ottoman Empire. And this sort of affected the cultural differences as far as the north tends to be Roman Catholic, as in Slovenia and Croatia, and then Serbia is Orthodox, and Bosnia is really mixed with all three, but is the majority actually a Muslim population. So maybe this has some sort of influence. I'm sort of speculating that. And also, as far as history goes, there were wars of independence in all of these states when they broke up from Yugoslavia. And in the case of Slovenia, they had the shortest war. It was like 10 days, or they call it the 10-day war in Slovenia, where they fought for independence from the Yugoslav Federation. As opposed to Bosnia, that had one of the longest wars and had sort of a territorial dispute over it, and it just completely tore it apart. And it sort of highlighted that in Bosnia there are so many ethnic groups. There are ethnic Croats, ethnic Serbs, and ethnic Bosnians, and they can't seem to bring themselves to be one nation state. And then also geographically, even in Yugoslavia, the north was more prosperous than the south. They were richer. They're closer to Western Europe, and then the south is down here, actually closer to, just in the south, closer to the Turkey region and whatnot. So politics and economics of it, also once Yugoslavia broke up, Slovenia, because I speculate they didn't last as long in a war, they were more prosperous during the Yugoslav time in the north anyway. They were quicker to form policies and get leaders who actually wanted to bring them into the EU. And they actually started doing that a lot faster than a lot of the other regions, such as Serbia, who was caught up in some sort of territorial dispute until like 2006 or 7 with Kosovo. They just can't seem to get together and work on their modernization process. They just sort of been fighting since they broke up. So the EU's influence on all of this is that the EU offered them, all of the countries, once they declared independence from Yugoslavia, something called a Stabilization and Association Agreement. And it's sort of like the first step in becoming an EU member and trying to modernize and create regulatory systems and institution building. And of course, Slovenia got like right on this, and they elected leaders who were dedicated to doing this, and they did it. And so they obviously became candidate countries and a member in 2004. And Bosnia is still struggling to do this. Bosnia and Serbia, more than the others, are just struggling to create the economic infrastructure and the political infrastructure, I suppose, to make these changes and really modernize mostly their economies, because that's a big part of it, and also just their political sphere in that way. Okay.
Yeah, very close. So just
Basically, in conclusion, it's just that it doesn't seem that the EU has had the biggest influence on it. It seems to actually be the states that are having the problem. So the EU has sort of a soft power influence, and all the states want to be in the EU. But like in the case of Bosnia, it's an internal problem that there's so many different, the government is run by so many different groups, they can't collectively come together and do what needs to be done to join the EU. And in Slovenia, it was a different case where they actually, I guess, opportunistically elected the right leaders who put them in the right direction, and so they were able to join there.
wonderful. Okay, well, thank you to all of our presenters here in this section. Let's